In this tutorial we're going to look at how to light a scene, in particular a landscape scene, and the easiest way to do that is to create a system, like a daylight system. And I'll just run through how you do that, and then we might look at some other ways that you can create lighting in your scene. So firstly, let's create that scene. We'll start with a plane. We'll increase the segments of the plane, and then we'll add another modifier. Let's add some noise. Give it a bit of shape. But in terms of sort of being quite prescriptive about how you create a scene, some terrain, I'd go to Edit Poly. We'll select the polygon. We'll turn on the soft selection, and we'll just with control button press down, just create some polygons, and you can see it's also soft selecting the area quite a distance around it. Then we'll just turn on the select and move, or W as a shortcut, and we'll just heighten those selected polygons slightly. There we go. So we're just trying to create a bit of a landform that the light will pick up, and then we might add some buildings to this landform. So back in Create Box, and there we have it. So that's something to test. We might just open up the perspective view, and if we just go back a little bit, zoom out, we can then go to under Create, look at the systems, and we want a daylight system. It's going to ask you if you want logarithmic exposure control. Select yes. Doesn't matter where you put the rosette, which you get when you click down the left button and move it out. We then want to just get this sun pretty much anywhere, it doesn't matter in terms of the final outcome, but if you do want to move it sort of further away, here's the orbital scale down here on the bottom right, which we can just play with. Now the scene is very bright, and we're going to sort of look at ways, if this is a problem that you have, look at ways to get rid of that. But the first thing to look at is with the sun selected, to go to modifier, and then under daylight parameters, for sunlight we want to select Mr. Sun. For skylight we want to select Mr. Sky, and we'll just select yes for that. And then with this system you can actually set up where it is, so we can get a location. Let's go to Melbourne, okay, and then we can set the time. So let's look at, I don't know, let's look at 6 o'clock in the evening in June. And isn't that a lovely time? In fact, we might make it 4 o'clock when the sun's going down in Melbourne. And here you can see it's showing up the shade pretty well, but where this really counts is in the renders, and that's where 3ds Max has a number of different options to go with as well. So let's look at the render setup that we've got here. So select the icon. Under the Common tab, let's just roll down to the bottom. Assign renderer. So production, default scanline renderer. material editor, default scanline renderer, and active shade default. So we just want to select production, and then we'll try with NVIDIA Mental Ray. OK to that. We might get rid of the material editor, so we'll just unselect the lock there. That takes it back to default setting. Then under global illumination, we want to be using the find gatherer function. So under skylight mode, just check the top one there, and let's see, fingers crossed, how this renders. Okay, so you're getting the shade on the terrain, getting the shade of the buildings pretty well. That's all coming through. If you close in with this function, you've got the sky in the background sort of hazed out. We might just do a quick one closer in. So say you wanted to have that nice close-in view of the building with the beautiful landscape in the background. We'll just have a look at how this comes off. That sky really comes in, and that's Mr. Sky, which we selected earlier on with our rolling hills. Okay, so that's the daylight systems function. The other way to get lighting in your scene is to go to create, and then this function is lights. Now these lights are really meant for sort of localized lighting, but we'll just see how they go with sort of a landscape context. So here we are at the back of the buildings, and if it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon in Melbourne in June, you probably wouldn't be this dark behind the buildings. So in terms of setting up your lighting, you may want to, under this drop down, go to standard and just put a target spotlight, and that's just basically, just put an omnis spotlight, and that's just a sort of very localized light, which has gone a bit nuts here. So we might just look at where that is. We'll just select the move function so we can see it. There he is. Okay, so that is pretty strong. We might just have a look at modify intensity, see if we can bring that down. Yeah, so we might just bring that right down to 0.1, and we might just move it in behind one of these buildings. Alright, might increase it slightly. And now when we take a render, we might get a more accurate sort of look at what's behind the building. Yeah, pretty good. Okay. The other lighting, and we might just get rid of our system for this. Now this is lighting I've sort of struggled with, but something we can give a go. Well, let's firstly look at this Omni without the system. Nice sort of localized light that comes through. You could see how that could be quite useful if you created, say, let's clone this light. And we'll create an instance so that if we change it, we're changing both at the same time. Now if we just select shift and move, we can create another clone, and we'll go instance again and OK. We're starting to light up the scene really with localized lighting rather than a system, so this could be quite useful. Now with that last one, because they're all instances, we can look at increasing the light of all of them. Let's take a render of that. Yeah, quite nice. Sort of brings out the subtlety of the slopes a little more, and there might be areas that you want shaded, so you'd obviously keep the omni away from those. Okay, the last thing we might try is the most advanced type of lighting in 3ds Max, and it's not something I'm very comfortable with, but we'll just see how we go. See, because we've taken all those lights out, we're back to default settings, which is lighting from below and from the side. But let's try and keep our landform there, and let's create under the photometric lighting. This is where it gets quite complex, and you can actually, through this system, specify exactly the type of say light bulb that you're interested in, and test that very much at a localized situation. So we might just put a target light in. If we look down under the color, we've got a whole lot of different types of colors that we can get. So let's go with a warm white. The light distribution type effect, we can also select the shape. Under advanced effects, there's a whole lot more we can look at. Anyway, let's just situate one of these lights in the landscape, and with the move, I'll just move it up a bit. Quite nice effects there at the localized, at the viewport, but when we render it, I think we're just going to find we get quite a dark landscape. Now, I'm not sure if this is me or if the fact that we're using a very, very small light in a big space. I suspect that's the case. I'm going to keep looking at this, but this is the one area of lighting I have not been successful at. So I would suggest for landscapes that you use the daylight parameters, daylight system, and you stay right away from the photometric. If you do want to add localize, go to standard, omni is there, or there's target spot or free spot as well. So that's about all on this tutorial. Thanks for listening.